how do you go from separation to settlement? Today, we're going to be talking about the 7 steps that you need to take along the way to get yourself from that first decision to finally being free. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Now, we usually do deep dives into many other topics
Mm.
such as valuations, mediations, narcissists, you name it. But
Mm.
today, we want to do a brief run through of the kind of 7 stages and things that you guys need to think about so that you can kind of see where you're heading, see where you're going, and get your head wrapped around the process. So let's go to our jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
And just a quick disclaimer here, this is not legal advice, this is legal education. We're just trying to show you the stages that you can take along the way. And a reminder that we are going to have to speed run this episode a little bit to get through all the stages, but you of course can do the divorce blueprint that is currently available and open for enrollments today. You can enroll and you can basically get yourself through these steps using our course, our videos, our worksheets, our templates, you name it, it's all there for you, and we will hold your hand as we do it. But let's get into it, Mum. So, I know I've said 7 steps, and the first one, we don't really need to help people with this one, but it is making the decision to separate. Do you see people come to you who haven't yet made that decision?
I think by the time they get to a lawyer, Laura, they're kind of accepted the inevitability of it. Maybe it isn't going to be tomorrow, but they're starting to think that process through. But yes, it's an awful stage.
And I do see a lot of people stuck in that limbo, that divorce limbo, where they know that they're broken up. Maybe they're sleeping in separate rooms. They know they're separated, but they haven't actually verbally said it. And I think a lot of people are holding back from doing that because they don't know what the next step is. It's easier to stay where you are doing what you've always done than it is to break out and do something new and scary. And look, of course, if you are thinking you can save your marriage or your de facto relationship, go and do it. Do that if you can, if it's safe.
Yeah.
Go and get counseling, do all of those things. But I think sometimes the decision to separate isn't about, yes, I want to separate. It's, yes, I'm willing to go through all this legal rahu.
Over the years, people have asked me, when do you separate? When's a good time to separate? I think most people separate when they can't stay any longer because the consequences, not just of the legal process, but to the children and the grandparents and everybody and the house and the money, it's pretty major. So people, I think, try to stay in relationships and patch them up as best they can because divorcing can be feel like you're pulling down all of those arrangements. But at some point, it happens, as you know, and you have to go.
And that gets us to step 2. And I know we're talking about having to go, but it's that making that decision, verbally saying it out loud. But then a lot of people at the moment, Mum, are stuck under one roof. It's impossible to get a decent rental at short notice. It's definitely impossible to get a decent house at all. And people are having to live together because of the financial reasons. They've only got maybe one asset, and it's the house. And they can't separate until that property settlement has happened. So what are some overviews of being separated under one roof that you see that you could share with people today?
Well, Laura, we always, when we're talking about people being under one roof, I always say that is the worst stage, I think, for people under one roof. Even worse if the other person is the one who's decided to leave. That's a separation where you have to just come to terms with it. But yes, it's really tricky, and there's kids there as well. So I see some of the difficulties as what makes the day after you separated different to the day before? Because at some point you need to know there was a definitive date as you split. And it might be that you still do washing for your ex or they still cook for everybody. So it's a very blurry phase, I think, to
Mm.
people.
And I guess this goes for whether you can leave the house or whether you are stuck there. There are some kind of things that legally lawyers wish their people knew at that stage.
Mhm.
And that is, like you said, knowing what day you've decided to separate, because that actually affects property settlement to some extent and your ability to get a divorce or when your de facto time starts. So there are some things that legally people should maybe start thinking about doing, Mum, in that early stage. What
Yes.
kind of things?
I think documenting the day that you've decided to leave, perhaps in your diary or somewhere, or send a text to somewhere, you do have to tell people, usually your family. If you appear as a single unit, still married, like go to the weddings, go to the parties, then the court doesn't accept that you're actually separated under one roof. It has to be more overt than that. It's different if you're not separated under one roof. If you've moved on, then you've got that date. Just start collecting your documents, giving a rough idea of what you've got. Don't get bogged down in detail. You should video everything in the house when you can, if it's safe to do so. It's stuff. If you have to leave for safety, then you have to leave.
Now, Mum's mentioned getting your documents together, and we've got a great checklist that you can download for free. Or if you're doing our course, you can literally get talked through what you need to do before you go. So if you are stuck still living separated under one roof, we've got 2 modules that walk you through those first really baby steps, even how to tell them and how to document that you've told them. So there are some really great insights in the course that really go into depth to help you really push you along and give you that super hand-holding guidance. But these are things you can do yourself as well. And if you haven't got our free checklist, please go get that, because there are documents that sometimes go missing or they never get disclosed, and then people have to pay thousands of dollars in court fees to get that information later. So you can be smart and get your ducks in a row. And I guess that gets us to step 3. And that's just basically getting an understanding of your legal rights and obligations.
Yes, that's true. Just going back to those things when you go, if you've got kids, you need to notify the schools, because the kids might start acting out if there's a separation. So, and we've got precedent letters for that, I think, as well.
So before formalizing doing the negotiations, you need to understand what your rights are in regards to assets and parenting, etc. So understanding where you stand. You can't be negotiating property until you know what you're entitled to.
Yeah. I hear you. I think you do need to go and see someone, don't you? You need to go. You need to have a little bit of a timeline, a bit of a property pool, and go and see a lawyer to find out what roughly your entitlement is.
And I think a lot of people are too scared to go see a lawyer in this stage because it's early on. I hear a lot of people saying, if I go see a lawyer, if my ex finds out I've seen a lawyer, World War III will happen. That'll be the end of the amicable. So there's a lot of people walking on eggshells, too afraid to find out what the next steps might be because they're worried it's going to cause their ex to explode.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, how long are they going to be stuck there, too afraid to? Their ex wants them to stay there. Their ex wants them to do nothing if that's the behaviour they're showing.
Look, there are things people can do, like you can pay in cash when you go to see your lawyer. Draw out cash, pay cash. That way you don't get anything showing up on your cards. It smacks of a coercive controlling relationship. If you are controlled by your ex, even when they're not there, that you've got to sneak in and see a lawyer. But we have countless people that do that and find out where you stand, and you might be surprised at what your entitlements are. And in my experience, someone who says to another person, let's not get lawyers involved, generally has seen a lawyer and knows exactly what you're entitled to and doesn't want you to.
Yes. And I think just that step is where I see a lot of our members break into their empowerment. They become, I'm too afraid, I won't be allowed, or it will cause problems too. I just found out why they didn't want me. I just found out why they've been trying to hold me back, because now I know all of this. I feel like I can get my power back. I can move on with my life. I'm not stuck under their thumb. An email a couple of weeks back to our members and subscribers was that action takes away fear. So if you take action, it does alleviate some of that fear, or you can just stay fearful and not do anything.
As long as it's safe, as long as it's physically safe for you to do so. But I listen to the language sometimes of people that we talk to, Laura, and that I'm not allowed to, or there's going to be trouble, are things you expect a child to say. But we need to step into our power and realize that we're adults. If you let someone else run your life, even if you thought it was for the best while you focused on the house or the kids or whatever, they've had 2 lives and you really haven't had a life to manage. And it can be very empowering. That first step can be very empowering. But I do encourage people to take it and just find out where they stand.
So if you need more information on how to go and do that, you can go and listen to another episode, or you can definitely, in the blueprint, we walk you through how to go and see a lawyer. We've got a checklist of what to take. We talk about what kind of lawyers to look for and just keeping all of that in mind. So if you need someone to handhold you through that, we can be there for you as well. Now I'm on stage 4, financial and property stuff. So dividing assets, property, and debt is probably the bit that no one wants to think about. And getting all the information, sharing all that information, understanding how property settlements work, finding some sort of peace with it all. Like that whole bit is yucky.
Okay, calm down. Calm down.
And I stuck my head in the sand. I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. And people can't normally see a way through. Because, particularly with mortgages, and it seems like you'll never unravel that knot. But the court's been doing it since 1975. Hundreds of thousands of people have come through the other side. It can be done. I don't think I've ever seen any situation that can't be unraveled one way or another. Got a mortgage? The court can sort that, or you can reach agreement about that. Does one of you want to buy the other one out? All of those things can be worked out.
And I think that's the important bit that you've just raised there. The courts have a way, but also you can do it through mediation and negotiations, which we're going to talk about as well. But there are processes that you can take and steps you can take that does not mean you have to go to court. You don't have to go to court. And you can divide property. You can sell the property and then divvy up the assets. It's all about getting the information and knowing what to do with it.
And it's important, while you say you don't have to go to court, that's right. But if you don't have a court order or a financial agreement between you both, and the court order can be a consent order, then it's not over. Someone can stick their hand up as long as you haven't got divorced or been divorced a year, or as long as your separation hasn't been for 2 years, people can put their hands up and go, now I'll have property. You go, well, I gave you half the house. What do you want? So before you start splitting money up, you do have to have some sort of agreement, a consent order, and we'll talk you through how to do your own consent orders, or you can get a financial agreement drawn up by a lawyer.
And I think that's important because I get so many people saying, oh, we're not going to bother with that. We didn't have much. So we're just going to divide the bank account in half and walk away with whatever. And I'm not a lawyer, but now I know, oh, wait, if that person won the lotto, their ex could come back and ask for some of it. And
as happened in that very famous case of Farmer and Bramley. Won the lotto about 18 months after separation. Had to divide it with the family.
So there is things as well about disclosure. If you go to mediation, there's a big word called disclosure, which basically is you just got to give them all these documents, all your bank statements, tax returns, you name it, everything, and their uncle's documents too.
You show me yours and I'll show you mine in terms of documents.
And we walk you through a disclosure process because that's a really expensive process for a lot of people, because lawyers have to look at every single one of those pieces of paper and deal with it. So we do show you in our DI course how you can do that part and save yourself some money, because you want to keep that money in case you do need to go to court.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
So then people can figure out their property pool. They then figure out how much of the property pool they're entitled to.
Yep.
They then create a consent order and say, okay, you're going to have this much, I'm going to have this much, we're going to sell the house and you get this percentage of it, or whatever, you have my super, I'll have this super, whatever they're going to decide. That's property settlement. And there is a very clear path to follow that you can do in our course, or you can go listen to some of our other episodes as well on property.
Mhm.
But then the next step, Mum, is parenting plans and arrangement.
Yes.
Basically, most parents' focus, I would say, is on their kids.
Yes.
Really, you're like, as long as the kids are okay, this will be okay. And so trying to figure out, well, what is the court's opinion of what is good for the kids? Because it might not match what you think is good for the kids. And if you don't have that in your head when you're negotiating and you do end up in court, you could come up with quite a shock.
Yes. Yes. For instance, the law recently changed, Laura, 6th of May, remember, the law changed that 50-50 is no longer the court's sort of main objective and then the variation down from that. Their main objective now, and I'd say it should have always been, was the best interests of the children. And so sometimes your gut instinct about what's right for the kids is right. If you're child focused, you'll instinctively know what's right for the kids. And finally, I think we're able to, and we did update that module. Yeah, finally, and we'll be able to follow our hearts. The person who's got the child's welfare at heart will be able to have that point of view put across into parenting plans and things. So you hear a lot of horror stories about the 50.
That's right. So stage 5 is basically about creating that parenting plan and getting an agreement or some sort of arrangement. Now, Mum, there's parenting plans and there's consent orders, so they're slightly different.
Yeah. So parenting plans really is anything that you write down and both sign and date. And you can put all sorts of things in there about where the dog lives and all of that, who pays for what. You can do all that, whatever you like in a parenting plan, but it's not enforceable. It's just a record of your arrangement. If you have a court order or a consent order, if you reach agreement and put in a consent order, the same thing, so you have to put everything in, but the things that the court looks at for the welfare of the children, then those orders are enforceable. And if they say someone has the children for a certain number of days, then that someone has to have the children for a certain number of days, or that person can go to court to enforce it. So, and there's a third one, Laura, which is, it's not a parenting plan. You don't write and sign it. It's not a consent order. You don't go to the court and ask for a court order. It's just the arrangement that you set up with emails and say, look, are you picking the kids up? How about you pick the kids up on Wednesdays because I work late that day? And that sort of informal arrangement that no one ever sets in stone, that's all right as well. You don't have to have something about the kids.
Now,
unless you need that peace of mind, I think. And again, it's general advice only. I know what you're going to say.
general advice, it's general education. And
general education.
It comes down to the type of personality you've got. And in our course and in our podcast, you've noticed a lot of the times we talk about these different divorce personality types. And if you've got a manipulative and controlling ex, not having a plan is really hard to deal with because they will just use every opportunity to use everything as leverage and you'll be running around chasing your tail forever. If you've got an amicable person who is got their kids' best interests at heart and gets along with you quite well, then you're probably right, Mum. You probably could deal with that for a bit.
I'm sure people do. I'm sure people do. Yeah.
But if you've got high conflict, you probably want to have a parenting plan or a consent order done. If you've got manipulative controlling, you probably want that as well. And even if you've got avoidant as well, you don't want to be waiting every 5 minutes. Every time it's for handover. What day are we doing handover today? Where are we going to do it? And never knowing what's going to happen tomorrow would be really hard for the kids as well as for yourself. So in our course, we show you how to create a parenting plan and how to create consent orders. And we talk about all the parts and things that you might not think of, every little bit that you need to put in a parenting plan or put in a consent order so that you know that it's going to be locked in and that you're not going to be manipulated if you've got that kind of personality or not going to be chasing your tail for these avoidant types.
And you can put it in a parenting plan or consent orders. We've done it that way. We've called it the 12 agreements, haven't we, Laura? And that seems to cover everything from Christmas to school halls, term time, birthdays, Mother's Day, all of those things.
Yes. So then it gets on to, Mum, I guess stage 7 is talking about finalising the legal paperwork and doing the official divorce stuff. So some people may not get an agreement. They might not get an ex who just sits down and says, all right, you have 50% of this and I'll have 50% of that.
Mhm.
They may have someone who doesn't agree, and sometimes 50% isn't fair. So you may have to go to mediation. You
Yes.
may have to go to court. But
Or put your foot in the door of the court.
put your foot in the door of the court.
Yes.
And all of those steps are very intimidating and very
Yes.
stressful.
Yes.
But don't worry, we've got you. You know, we've got episodes in the podcast, but we've also got the guide, the lessons, the videos, and the templates so that you can face mediation, you can face doing the divorce paperwork, and you can face writing your consent orders and filling out the paperwork and filing it in court without stress. So is there anything in particular, Mum, that you think people really need to remember when they're facing this big stage?
The big stage.
The legal stuff.
Okay. I think with the children's matters and the property, if you've got a high conflict situation, you may not want to spend too much time on negotiation. But there's a time limit from when you'll get divorced, and there's a time limit from when you separate, and you have to try and fit at least the beginning of a court thing in that date. Otherwise, you may lose your interest. But it's so comforting to know that the step of actually divorcing your wife or husband doesn't need their cooperation. Now, joint divorce applications have become very common and familiar to people, but actually, I don't really think it's a good idea unless you are really, really, really amicable. I think it's better if one person takes the clear step, files an application for divorce, and you can divorce that statue that we talk about without them cooperating in any way. Of course, if you do that in a marriage, you trigger your time limits, so be careful with that. But I would like people to know that your ex doesn't have to sign any divorce papers. They can be served and you can go through without them cooperating in any way.
And let's just be really clear. Mum's talking about divorce as in marriage and divorce.
Yes.
She's not talking about your property settlement or your parenting agreements. So they do have to be signed by your ex.
They do. But divorce...
You can divorce them.
Yeah. So divorce is just, I say to people, getting unmarried so that you can marry again or not, as the case may be. But we've got that in the course. It's generally an afterthought after property and children are sorted out. But it is for those people who are married and want a clean ending. It's nice to know that they can't hold you over a barrel for that. You can do that bit on your own.
Yeah. And look, I think a lot of people freak out again at this legal paperwork stage, the consent orders, the filing or doing mediation, even just doing the disclosure. Like, there's a lot involved in this phase, and I did float through. I floated through some of this. I just let my lawyer do it all, and I didn't pay attention to much of it until it started to cost me too much money. And then I went, and until I realized it wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to go in.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your finger on the pulse, if you don't know what's coming up next, if you don't know how this works, you are less likely to get the outcome you want because you're letting somebody else imagine what it is that you want and somebody else drive the car for you. So
it's true.
It is a really good thing to have, and I cannot stress enough, I wish I'd had the blueprint when I was going through it, because at least I'd go, okay, this is what we're doing next. This is why we're doing it. This is what I should be prepping. Okay, I might provide some of this to the lawyer, or doing it myself even. I know I did do a mediation by myself, and I was very proud of myself, but it was the second one. So I kind of knew what I was in for. If I'd had this course, I would have done the first one myself as well.
It wasn't until you went through yours, Laura, that I realised how little lawyers help people. We see them like pop up clients, and then you go away and we don't know what you're doing the rest of the time. But because it was you and I couldn't act for you, I went through every bump in the road with you. And that's when you realised, you said those immortal words, Mum, what do people do whose mothers aren't accredited family law specialists?
Yeah.
And then you said, I'm going to fix this. And I'm so proud of you that you did, Laura.
Well, it wasn't without you, Mum, we wouldn't have been able to do it. But it does remind me of this meme that I created the other day, where this guy is in a roller coaster cart and he's at the top of a roller coaster and he's looking behind him at the person behind him who's filming him. And it's a huge roller coaster. Like it's going down and up and around and everybody else around them is screaming. And he's just sitting there like this the whole time. And I basically said how your lawyer expects you to react as you go through your divorce journey.
Oh, it's so good.
And it is, they don't understand. You've got emotion. I mean, I'm sure lawyers understand it. And look, I loved my lawyers. They were lovely. But it's a day-to-day
I just don't want to know.
Yeah, you put your other stuff on. So it's a whole emotional roller coaster of hell. And it doesn't go hand in hand with lawyers. It just doesn't. You don't see a lawyer and go, that person's going to be super empathetic and kind and supportive as I go through this. And look, some of them are. I'm sure some of them are. And Mike were lovely. And you are lovely too, Mum. But I'm just saying, if I'd had this where they're going, it's okay, you're going to freak out, you're going to need to take the next day off, you're probably going to get upset at this point and this point, be prepared. All of those little things that you did kind of help me with. I thought, holy moly, I wouldn't have expected that to happen. That would have hit me like a ton of bricks. So I guess our podcast helps people with that as well.
I'm sure it does, Laura. I'm sure it does.
And a lot of people have written in saying, thank you so much for the course because, they couldn't have gotten through it without that additional support. So it's legal and emotional support. I think that you and me together, Ma, if we replicate us, oh, wait, we did. It's in the course.
And financial in a way as well, because I think you can choose where you spend money. I like your analogy about someone else driving the car. I think of it like someone else driving a car with your house on the back, and wherever they park, that's where you're stuck. They get out and leave. So you've got to have some say.
Well, when it comes to parenting arrangements, that's something I think did hit me quite like it's a big legal document with this and this and the parent blah shall do this on this date and that, and they're reading it through and you're ticking it off and you're not really thinking until you said to me, Laura, you live it in your head, go through it in your head and make sure, because whilst they're pushing you to agree to these things, you've got to live it until the kids are 18. You've got to live whatever it is you sign this to. And people who don't go through divorce, they can quit a job. They can just walk away and go, no, I quit this job. If they don't like the laws in the country, they can leave the country.
Yeah.
If you've got these court orders, you're stuck with them. Mm-hmm. And it is something you need to take very seriously and be as educated as possible because, otherwise someone's going to turn up one day, pick up your house and say, yep, you're living here now, and every second Saturday you're going to do this.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It is a lot. It is a lot. And I guess that takes us on to the final stage, which I didn't include. I said 7, but there is 8. And that's moving forward. That's that next stage is moving on after divorce.
Yes.
And that is really important for your financial and emotional, that you need to get your head around all of that and start again. And a lot of people, Mum, haven't had access to finances before. They didn't control the money. And now all of a sudden they do. And it's a big shock.
It is, but, as someone who's been there, it's exciting as well. It is. Yes. And I don't like to think of it as starting again, as someone who's been there. What happened has happened. If there's children, it was a blessing no matter what. And that you're not starting again. You've got the leg up that comes from perpetual property settlement, okay? So, and you've got all this new knowledge, this new confidence, this new assurance, and you've got rid of the dead weight of your relationship that wasn't serving you. So I have a different view, but I do hear people say 20 years wasted, 10 years wasted, but I encourage people to not think of it as that, okay? So it's part of your journey through life.
And I have seen we do Q&As pretty much weekly where you and I get on and people come and ask questions. Yeah. And I have seen transformations in the members that come along to those Q&As who are right at the start saying, if I do that, if I ask for that much percent, I'm worried my ex will get mad. So just to not rock the boat, I will do X, Y, Z. And slowly over time, they're like, you know what? Wait, I do deserve that. I'm going to be doing this today. And they get to the end and they say, we've finally finished, blah, blah, blah. And things don't upset them. That's financial. And then with parenting stuff, you have these people that are like, is it okay if I say no to this about this because it's running me ragged? And slowly over time, they come into their power in that regard and say, oh, my ex sent me another message the other day complaining that I dropped the kids off 5 minutes late, but I don't care. And I just laughed at it.
Yeah.
People's reactions to their exes change. They get more empowered, and it is a beautiful thing to watch, isn't it, Mum?
Yeah, it's very exciting to have the real person move forward rather than the shadow that they perhaps were in an unhappy relationship. Just pick you up on that 5 minutes early, though. That is technically a breach of court orders if the time is in order. So, legally breached early. But if there was no order, that's right. Or you had an absolutely amazing excuse, maybe it's okay. But but it is. There's emotional and there's financial as well as sort of just, moving on into your new space, I guess. So, that's what the court wants to do. That's what I do.
And I think the reason I tagged that on at the end is because I know that if you're listening to this, you're not at the end. No. You're right at the beginning. You probably haven't left yet, or you're thinking of leaving, or you're trying to figure out how you're going to make ends meet, or
you're in the middle of it all.
Yeah, and you're terrified about your children's situation or whatever it is. I know that feeling of just dread every day, or what's going to happen today. When is this ever going to end? But it does end. And you do get to then completely create a new life. And it's something that you need to remind yourself that what's happening now isn't forever. Mm-hmm. But it's also important to know that quote about fear is reduced by action. If you stay in that one spot where you are right now, freaking out and not doing anything, the less empowered you're going to be, the more fear you're going to have, the harder it is. So you've really got to kind of push yourself through these steps, which is why the course is so good, because I was quite avoidant about the whole thing. And having someone say, all right, today you're going to work on this. This is what you're going to do today. I think it would push you through to get you out sooner to the better, exciting, moving forward after divorce phase.
And do you think, Laura, that it might have helped keep your buoyancy and your mood and your comfort and confidence higher, even if you were still in the maelstrom of it? Yeah. If you knew that you were taking steps on a path, a proven path that gets you out of this. So,
look, I don't know if anyone knows about my medical journey, and I don't know where I'm sharing this, but it's how I got through with I had some chronic illnesses, and I've had many surgeries. And through those as well, I would say to myself, okay, the doctors say, we'll have surgery in 6 months. And you go, all right, I've just got to get through these 6 months. And then I know after surgery, I'm going to be better, after the recovery. So that got me through. And that's when I was going through the divorce, I kind of felt the same way. I thought, this is going to be crap for a fair while, but I know I'm going to get through it. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to be okay. And Mum, we always talk about, it's a bit hippy-whippy, but I don't know if sometimes you can see in my back, I've got a vision board. Yeah. I'm like the least vision board person you can imagine, but I do a vision board, and that helped me get through. I put up what my life was going to look like, and it did help. It did help. So a reminder, okay, I've got to get through this. I'm going to get to that.
So that you've ended up with the pink office
and pink Christmas decorations.
And everything you could possibly want.
I would have never imagined that in a million years. And I definitely wouldn't have imagined us doing a podcast together.
So I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Well, there you go, Mum. So I just want to reach out to you listening today and know that we know where you are. We know how you're feeling, and it will be okay. If you want to join our course, it is open to enrollments. It opened last night. It's open until the 27th of November. We then close doors because we want to take care of everybody who comes through with us. We meet with you weekly if you want, minimum of 40 sessions a year. You can come along and ask your questions, or just sit there and be supported like the rest of the people. Watch the other people go through. We've got a lovely community group that is on our platform that is not accessible by Facebook. And you can go there and talk to people who are going through similar experiences to you. We've got all sorts of people going through all different types of divorces that you can imagine. And then on top of that, you've got our module after module after module, hand holding you through all of these stages, providing you with letter templates, the actual templates to fill in and the video guides on how to do it all, and mum explaining it all, and me getting her to explain it in a normal people way. And us also at the end of each lesson talking about how you need to tweak it based on what type of divorce personality you've got.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I know from the reviews and the thanks that we get from people that have gone through it and gotten through it, I know that it is a good thing for others. So we are pushing it to say, hey, if you have been listening to us for a long time, if you get value out of our podcast, you will get immense value out of the divorce course.
Yep.
So go and check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. We're only opening doors until the 27th, and then it's closed. Platinum is where you get to actually talk to mum, but we only have a certain amount of spaces for that because there's only one mum. So if you are interested in doing the Platinum course, which is the course plus talking to mum plus the Q&As, go and sign up to that as soon as possible because we're doing our webinars this week, and we will be also encouraging people to sign up after the webinars. So we wish you all the best of luck if you've listened to this episode. If the doors have closed, please send us an email and say, can I go on the wait list for next year? And we will put you on the wait list, but we are having to put up prices for next year. And Mum, thank you for doing a very broad overview of everything. If you need to learn about any of this specifics, go and listen to our podcast episode on it, or go and do the course and really get in there and save yourself money and save yourself tears. All right.
Well, that sounds lovely. All the best, everyone.
We'll see you all next week. Back to normal programming. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye, Laura.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording